All right, so a big weekend for the South Carolina Gamecocks, so there's no one better to have on the show than JC Shurburtt from the Big Spur and Inside the Gamecocks. JC, thank you so much for returning to the show.
Hey, thanks. It's an honor and privilege to be here with you guys talking SEC football today.
You know, what is the general, if any, maybe I'm overreading the situation, but any sense of panic after that Week 1 showdown with Old Dominion from Gamecock Nation?
I think probably the fan base. I mean, you're coming off a 5-7 season that injury plague, tough schedule. There are a lot of reasons, but you still had Spencer Rattler and Xavier Legette and some good moments. And, you expect a coach in his fourth year to improve it. You open against a group of 5 team. Lenore Sellers, the new quarterback, has a world of talent. Things just after that first fumble that they recovered early and went up 7-0, they couldn't have started any better. Things just kind of went sideways a little bit. And I went back and looked at the film, and there's a lot to be desired about were they prepared to go play their best game in their first game and all that. But the breakdowns were really whereas last year it was such a revolving door on the offensive line. You watch that North Carolina film, and you had guys felt like they were on roller skates, just getting overwhelmed by what ended up being not a very good defense in the Tar Heels. This year's a little different. It's like one guy missing this or one guy missing that. And Shane Beamer said earlier this week it can be cleaned up. I believe it can be. And I think, unlike previous years, South Carolina, you look at their roster and you look at their depth and they've, knock on wood, survived the injury bug so far. This team should be a lot better than beating Old Dominion by 4 points. And I'm not even going to be one of those guys that sits there and goes, well, Old Dominion could win the Sun Belt. My God, they're great. No, I don't think they will. I think the Sun Belt's a really good league. And, East Carolina could come in there and cut them this week. But I think there's a lot of work to be done. It's kind of like I used a great analogy on Bill King's show, and I'll use it here. It's like, when you're in your 20s and you go out for happy hour and you're sitting there, first 2-3 beers, couldn't feel any better. Maybe some Skinner comes on the jukebox. The next thing you know, you wake up the next morning, it's 10 a.m. There's a bag of Taco Bell in your lap. There's cheese and sour cream coming off your face. You got 27 missed phone calls from work. The dog's crapped on the floor because you didn't let him out. And you may or may not have texted your ex-girlfriend from high school at 2 o'clock in the morning expressing your undying love to her. Now, you didn't die. You didn't get a DUI. You didn't go to jail, right? But look, let's be honest. It was sloppy, and there's a lot to clean up, right? That's how that game went. Started off well enough, but in the end, you got to get up and look in the mirror if you're Shane Beamer and the Gamecocks and clean this mess up.
Oh, man, Mike, I've been there. I understood that analogy probably better than anybody.
Everybody, I've said this a couple times, this analogy, and everybody said, sounds like you got a lot of details. All
right. Oh, man, that's awesome. Yeah, the double-decker, they need to bring that one back. That's the messiest one. Sorry, you got me on the Taco Bell, and I started thinking about it. I knew eating a taco, it's like I need to get home and eat this thing, but I know it's going to lose its crunchiness. So I got to do it on the way, and there's no way I'm not getting sour cream and cheese all over the place. So I've been there, brother.
That is the truth. It's the God honest truth.
Why is it, do you think, that South Carolina under Shane Beamer always seems to start so slow? And that's even something during camp that Beamer said, we're well aware of it. Is there anything, obviously if they knew they'd change it, but how big of a red flag is that, I guess?
It's a big red flag because in this league now, it's not like the Big Ten where, yes, they'll have a Michigan schedule of Texas and stuff like that. Ohio State will play Notre Dame or something, but most of those teams get preseason. If you look at most Big Ten schedules, like Iowa tends to jump from like an FCS to then, the Cy-Hawk Trophy, which in some years it's very competitive. And then they play 2 Sisters of the Poor. So Big Ten schools don't even start playing conference games until September. In the SEC, and then you got big games in the first weekend. So you got to start faster because, you get in a hole and then sometimes it's hard to reclaim the momentum. I thought that happened this team last year, along with some unfortunate injuries. The North Carolina game sapped the momentum out of them. They had enough to compete with Georgia for a half, but then by the time that Florida game, they collapsed in that game, and the season collapsed, and it took them until after 3 games left in the year to get it back. And sometimes that happens, and I think it's very important with the way the schedule sets up 2 guys for Carolina this year. In 2022, they started bad. Okay. But then you had Charlotte and South Carolina State, and then a road game with these Kentucky Wildcats that did not have Will Levis. And then a week off, and week off, and A&M came to town, and a bad A&M 5-7 A&M team, and they beat them. So you had those 2 back-to-back games against teams you were going to get right games. There's a get right game in a couple of weeks against Akron. After that, it's Ole Miss, at Alabama, at Oklahoma, then another off week, then Texas A&M. So there's not really a get right period if you start bad this year, and there's really just no reason for it. I mean, everybody else in the SEC took care of business last week. The teams that lost to good teams, in my opinion, regardless of how they looked. South Carolina should not have had the worst performance of anybody, and by all measures, they did.
Are you afraid of you mentioned collapse? I don't like to say must wins. I think I get thrown around too often, but it's kind of feeling like this Kentucky game based off your schedule, because you don't have a preseason. It ramps up real quick, and Kentucky's not the toughest opponent you're going to face in the next 4 weeks, but it feels like it's a kind of must win situation to avoid that type of collapse. Would you agree?
Well, I don't know. Shane Beamer, if you look at his first 3 years, there are times when, 2022 is an example. They had that good stretch I was talking about. Well, then they turned around and lost to a pretty bad Florida team, 38-6. The next week, not to bring it up, but they turned around and beat Tennessee, and then beat Clemson, and then had a pretty good bowl game. They lost to Notre Dame. So he's and even in 2021, Dan Mullen and Florida come to town for a night game, and they beat them 40-17. It was odd. He's had this ability to get things right in the week, but my question would be, are you waiting too long or what? But I think it is important because Shane Beamer is 2-10 on the road in the SEC during his career. He's 1-7 against Power 5 teams in the month of September in his career. The only win was a 7-point escape, really, against a Mississippi State team that fired their coach last year in Columbia. So things haven't gone well against good competition. I consider Kentucky good competition. It's not as easy as it used to be to play those guys. And so, at some point it's got to turn. Am I afraid? Man, I've owned thebigspur.com since 2007. I've been a Gamecock since my whole life, 76. Started following it in 86. Nothing scares me anymore. I don't get afraid. I'm used to the fan backlash and all that. For the fans' sake, though, and for people who save up their money and spend a bunch of money and take their families to games, and the fans like we have around the SEC, for them, I'd like to see it turn around. Because these people that, there's a lot of depression and stuff last year. I don't want there to be depression this year. So hopefully they do it at some point. It's got to change, because you can't just start poorly every year, because the schedule's too tough always on the back.
Yeah.
I just heard a pretty alarming stat, though, on week 1 against Old Dominion. Of the 27 dropbacks South Carolina had, I believe that they had 17 that went for incomplete or a sack. So 17 out of 27. So what is the key issue there, do you think? Is it the offensive line? Is it the receivers? Or is it Sellers in his first time taking over?
All of the above. I think that you look at some plays, and like I said, I walked away going, and I think in the SEC in general, fan bases have like way out of whack expectations for offensive linemen, because but this wasn't an SEC team Carolina was playing. So, I walked away going, they're going to have problems. They're going to be leaky up front. But then you go back and look, and it's like, okay, well, some plays Sellers drops back and he misses the open guy. And, and for young quarterbacks with strong arms like he's got, sometimes that's the hardest part. Drives coaches crazy. Used to drive Steve Spurrier crazy to a certain extent, but sometimes Spurrier didn't want you to take the short pass. He was like, just throw it 25 yards. Come on. That's what he wanted. But, and so he'd go for the longer pass or whatever and lower percentage, and he'd have guys running open underneath. There were some drops. The pressure plays sometimes were kind of a mix of him holding on to it too long, being a little tense and indecisive, or sometimes, like I said, one guy, maybe two guys. And it's frustrating when you look at it if you want this team to do well, because, you look at it and four guys are doing what they're supposed to do, dominating. The guys drive back, they're beautiful pocket. One dude, and one time one dude just fell down. I don't know if a soccer game, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, I don't know. But that was it's frustrating. At the same time, as frustrating as that is, there's a big difference between that and, my God, we just got whipped at the line of scrimmage by Old Dominion. Yeah. That's a different ball game. So, I don't know. The score was ugly, the game was ugly, but when you kind of dig into it, because Beamer and the coaches kept saying that all week, and everybody, of course, is like, yeah, whatever. But when you really go back and look play to play, which I'd like to say I break down every single play, I don't. But you take a nice sample size, and you're like, huh, okay. And it's good to watch the bad plays more than the good plays, because that tells you more.
And there was some good plays, man. I'm looking at that running back room. That growing up, South Carolina seemed to always have a good or great running back, and it feels like last few seasons we've not had that. But I saw a glimpse of it last week. So how's the fans reacting to having Rocket Sanders back there?
It's night and day better, man. Boy, nobody, as much as the offensive line took a lot of crap last year, South Carolina had one guy by the end, by that Clemson game, and he was banged up, not injured to where he couldn't play, but really sore, banged up by about 65%. Mario Anderson, a D2 transfer from Newberry, good player. He's at Memphis now. But South Carolina went out and got Rocket. They got Attaway from North Texas, who's their backup. They have a scat back named Juju McDowell that's been there a while. They got a kid from South Carolina State who's going to be really good. That reminds me of Derek Watson, Jawarn Howell, plus Dontavius Braswell, plus this kid Matthew Fuller they got out of Georgia as a true freshman that's going to be really good. So they went from zero to pretty daggum solid. Now, Rocket had to kind of take the majority of the carries. I think it's probably a situation where you'd like Rocket to maybe carry it 24 times against Bama, not Old Dominion. But he did look good, and boy, he was. You want to talk about close? He was that close from breaking one against ODU. But then again, you talk about the offensive line. We talked about the pass blocking earlier. There was too much penetration in the run game overall. Mm-hmm. That's one I will say. PFF charted it, and sometimes PFF, they may miss something every now and then. And it's not what I would call 100% accurate, but it's pretty accurate. I think it was them that charted it. It said his yards after contact were 100%. 100? Well, that's quite a performance. but hey, you know what? I'll take it, because I think there's a lot of games where you do have a lot of yards after contact, but that also means that, if you get a block off, which isn't going to be easy against Deion Walker and these guys, Rocket, he may go even further. So I think he's a good player, and I think he was kind of feeling his way back this last game. I think he'll get better and better. He's healthy. I just think he's kind of feeling his way back. And heck, I'd like to see him throw him some passes and get it, because he did that at Arkansas too. So he's a really good back. And you're right. South Carolina's had nobody like him since Mike Davis in 2013, right, in my opinion. Even though Rico Dowdle, who was always hurt, is now the starting running back for the Dallas Cowboys. So go figure. During the Muschamp era, poor Will had all kinds of injuries and stuff. But there's this oft-injured running back starting for the Cowboys now. So,
hey, do you think it's fair to say, JC, that after week one, that all the pressure on this game is actually on Kentucky? They're hosting it. They've lost 2 in a row to the Gamecocks. I think everybody that's not associated with South Carolina is probably going to be expecting Kentucky to win. And everything Shane said about South Carolina's upcoming schedule, you can make the same case for Kentucky. They play Georgia next week. If they don't win this game, they may even lose College game day. I mean, there's a lot. I feel like the pressure is on Kentucky in this matchup. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's the classic week 2 kind of deal, where week 1 kind of painted one picture, but then it's really the truth is another. And so if I think both teams need to play better. Kentucky's game against Southern Miss, they won. I will say Old Dominion's better than Southern Miss. I mean, so this is not Brett Favre is not walking through that door. I mean, Larry Fedora is not walking through that door. No, I mean, they are not the Southern Miss we all grew to love back in the day. They're bad. But there were some plays that, kind of just like the Gamecocks. The difference was when Kentucky needed to execute, they did, and they didn't, Southern Miss didn't provide any sort of resistance. So, if Kentucky doesn't play better, South Carolina will go up there and win. And if South Carolina doesn't play better, Kentucky will win significantly. As far as the pressure goes, yeah, I would look. If you're a 10-point favorite at home, and I know it's down to 8.5 or 9, which is weird, but double-digit favorite at home, and South Carolina has not won up there, but like once since 2011. They won up there in 2012. Yeah, since 2012, and that was when Will Levis was out 2 years ago. Will Levis did not play, so when Kentucky's had their starting quarterback, it's been over a decade since South Carolina's won at Kroger Field. It was called Commonwealth Stadium back then, right? So and it's kind of a weird place to play. Their fans do get into it. They do get a big crowd. I can't hear their marching band because they play DJ music all the time. You talk about that controversy at Florida State. First thing I thought about was Kentucky. I was like, why isn't there a controversy there? I took my wife. Never been to an SEC football game. First one is Kentucky. I'm like, huh? And she's like, it sounds like a Chicago Bulls game here. And I'm like, well, honey, this is Kentucky. It's a little different. We had a great time, Keeneland and all, but it was something else. But that crowd will get into it. They don't want to be. They think they should beat South Carolina every time they play them.
Yeah,
history shows us different, and that matters. The confidence matters. Mark Stoops matters. He's beaten the Gamecocks a lot. He said at the end, that game was at the end of last year, so it's fresh on everybody's mind. He said it was the most disappointing loss of his coaching career in Columbia last year. So he's ready for this one. But it's going to come down to who plays the best, and the Gamecocks are going to have to show massive improvement. They're capable. As for the whole season, if the Gamecocks play like they played against Old Dominion all year, it's going to be a long year. They won't win an SEC game if they play like they did last Saturday. That includes Vanderbilt in the kill zone over in Nashville. Jerry Kill, the kill zone. I knew the kill zone. I knew that was going to happen. I called it last week. I said, don't mess with the kill zone. Ask Auburn about the kill zone last year in New Mexico State. And I was like, Clark Lee made probably the most gangster genius move as possible, because he's going to get that OC in there in that quarter. He's going to start running the option, and it's going to drive it. And sure enough, there they go. So Vandy's not going to be fun this year. So anyway,
well, hey man, I am curious. I would never consider this a rivalry, 10 years ago, but it's become one ever since the infamous sunglasses, So yeah. I feel like, in fact, me and Mike, I should say, has dubbed this the Sunglass Bowl, and I love it. And Beamer, one of the things that I like is how personal he makes things, including this game. We all seen the infamous celebrations after the victory. So how big does this win mean more for Shane Beamer, or would this win mean more for the fan base here?
Well, the fan base will breathe a big sigh of relief. Yeah. I mean, you got to keep most of the Gamecock fan base now. My age goes back to the 80s. I'm 47, but a big chunk of the youngsters, they kind of came at the end of Holtz, beginning of Spurrier when they were kids. They don't. Oh, God bless losing to Kentucky. Oh my God, this should never happen. And Carolina did beat them pretty good. So. Yeah, and then Beamer last year after they won the game, they did a little video, and he is in his office and he reading something real quiet. And he opens the drawer and the sunglasses, I guess, kind of came to life. And they were playing that Soulja Boy song, and this glow came out of it. And he looked down at it and he reached for it. Then he's like, nah. And he closes it. I mean, I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And you never really heard of Mark Stoops having beef with anybody. You know, he just kind of Mark Stoops. He kind of looks like like a guy that's managing the Applebee's and never comes out of his office. You know, somebody said that today. You're just a good old guy. Hey, smart. Hey, is Mark here? Tell him Peter called in sick, or we need a backup on dishwasher. And he's sitting back there, and he's like, "Hey, what's all great, guys? Hey, guys, ready to roll tonight? Who's got front of the house? You know, I mean, just super guy. and here comes Shane. You know, just and Shane's a good guy too, very well liked. But yeah, here's the thing about it, guys. If the SEC sticks with the 8-game schedule and it goes to a 1-7 rotating format, Kentucky and South Carolina are stuck with each other. Because within the league, who's South Carolina's biggest rival? Georgia's a border battle. Kentucky's is Tennessee. There's no way on God's green earth Tennessee's giving up playing Vandy as their permanent opponent. I mean, after the years Tennessee had to play Bama every year, come on, man. They're going to take that and run. And then everybody else is matched up. Texas, Oklahoma, Florida, Georgia, blah, blah, blah. The Iron Bowl, the Egg Bowl. It goes on down the list. And so South Carolina, Kentucky are stuck with each other. No matter what kind of schedule it is, they're going to play every single year. And is it a rivalry? Probably not from South Carolina's perspective, but is it a bad blood kind of football game right now? Absolutely. I think it's one both sides want to win. Both fan bases want to win for different reasons. And certainly both head coaches want to win. And Shane Beamer's the only coach in the history of South Carolina football with a winning record against Mark Stoops.
Oh,
Spur was 1-2, Muschamp 1-3, Mike Bobo was 0-1, Shane's 2-1.
Had no idea. All right, let's get you out of here on this, JC. Can we get a prediction for the game?
Yeah, you know, look, I said this week I'm not going to get caught up in after they played the way they played last week, get caught up and then, I'm going to surprisingly make a prediction. No, look, I don't like making predictions anyway, because every game is determined on scenarios. And if this happens, this will happen. If this happens, you never know. That's why we love the game. Yeah. But everybody loves predictions. So I'll make them. And I made this on my Inside the Gamecocks show just now. I'm picking Kentucky to win 24-16. I think you will, I think, based on that prediction, I think South Carolina, it's always close. So it'll remain close. But then, I don't necessarily trust South Carolina right now in a close game like that to make the plays when it matters. I do trust those receivers at Kentucky, and I do trust the defensive players at Kentucky. Is Kentucky going to be able to put 24 on the board? Maybe with a defensive touchdown. South Carolina, my guess, is a touchdown and 3 field goals, kind of like normal. So that's what I said. But look, it could easily go either way. Nothing would surprise me. It's week 2 in the SEC. But I think that Carolina's got a lot to prove right now. And when you're the only team in the league that without a valid reason, Florida has valid reason. A&M does too. Without a valid reason, you don't even look like you belong. Then nobody should pick you. So I think then so that's why I made my pick, and certainly won't be hoping for that, but you gotta kind of call it like you see it, and pick the right way, or guess what? We won't be having a job anymore, will we?
Hey, before you go, can you tell our audience how to follow you and how to listen to Inside the Gamecocks?
Absolutely. Like Inside the Gamecocks, there's multiple ways to listen. It's the Chief Sports Network app. It's on Google Play. It's on iTunes. There's a lot of other stuff on there. We have a Florida podcast on there, an Illinois podcast. We're expanding on the Chief Sports app. Also, youtube.com/Chief Sports South Carolina, or on 24/7 Sports, thebigspur.com. You can also, if you want to hear me talk about general college football with Mike Morgan from ESPN, the JC and Morgan podcast is also on the Chief Sports Network. And and on 24/7 Sports. And we rarely talk about the Gamecocks. So you fans of other schools, if you think you're just going to call in and hear us go, crowing and cackling and go Cox and all that, you won't. We talk a lot of Georgia, Texas, big picture stuff on JC Morgan. Have great guests. Had Vern Lundquist on this summer, and that was tremendous. So invite everybody to check me out there.
If you ever start up a food channel, let Cousin Shane know. He's an automatic host right there.
Oh, I think me and Shane would be great with cooking shit. Barbecue, tasting, get us an RV kind of. Hey,
say no more. We just can't call our exes anymore.
Heck yeah, boy. I gotta lose those numbers. All right, fellas, man, it's been enjoyable. Thank you so much.